Hi, everybody. We're going to buzz through a quick Vivisection. Bellator 134 British Invasion / Newton versus McGeary. I am Dallas Winston of BloodyElbow.com. That is Zane Simon, also of BloodyElbow.com. Zane, hi.
Hey, this is Zane Simon, as you so rightly say. I don't want any confusion out there. There's some imposters running around. I don't know what people have been hearing about me. That ain't me. If it's bad, that ain't me.
I appreciate that confirmation, although you seem imposterable. It's totally
Imp-
a word.
Imposterable? Like easy
Yeah,
to
like
imposter or
impossible. No,
unimposterable?
impossible. Yeah, I need to work at
Okay.
that. Anti. All right, but either way, let's dive into this. This is 2 for 2 for Vivisections today. We've just completed a stellar breakdown of the UFC 184 card. As usual, we're going to buzz through the pertinent fights on Bellator, which is always the one, two, three,
Five.
5 main card fights this time. That's different. They always stuck with 4. Hmm. Make that 5 main card fights, as well as touch on some highlights for the undercard. My compadre has made me aware of something I had no idea of, and that is on the undercard, Bobby Flynn versus, is it Neiman Gracie?
I would guess it's Neiman Gracie. I think I've only either read it or I've heard other people say it, and then at that point, I don't know. You can't listen to people on the internet. Except us. Whoa,
Especially us.
whoa.
Especially right here.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
either way,
I mean,
share your knowledge on that.
that's just an interesting. I don't know. Should be a fun little showcase. I don't know if it'll be a showcase for probably a showcase fight for Neiman Gracie, Bobby Flynn's, just kind of some of the like a lot of the regional filler that Bellator has been picking up. They seem to like to get those guys who are coming out of organizations that pad records. So we see a lot of Bellator filler are fighting guys that are like 0 and 10 and 0 and 7 and all that. And Flynn's kind of one of those guys, so I would say he's probably there as fodder for Neiman Gracie, who's been a pretty outstanding grappler in his career and has a couple of MMA fights over the past couple of years in World Series of Fighting, both of which he's won by submission. So that should just be it's a fun fight to look out for on the prelims.
And he is Henzo's
Nephew.
nephew. And what's Bobby Flynn's record?
Uh, they're like 5-2 or something. I want to
Okay,
say,
okay,
but
not
no.
bad.
His only impressive win was his debut against somebody who's like 6-5. Everyone else like 0-1, 0-4, 0-7 kind of thing.
All right, and there's actually one preliminary card fight that I think jumps out to both of us. We'll talk about that in slightly more depth, but real quick, the other 2 mentionable matchups are heavyweights Raphael Butler versus Josh Diekmann. Butler, of course, the former boxer, unfortunately gained a little notoriety for that back headbutt he threw. I can't think of what that cat's name was, but was real high on him at first. I think it was AKA he was training at, and really had a lot of respect. Knew he couldn't make it as a boxer, but Javi Ayala beat the brakes off him in his last fight. Josh Diekmann's been kind of an unknown surprise, but he's come along and throttled some people with big, heavy first-round strikes. Do you have a feeling? I might even go with Diekmann on this one.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like a classic kind of one hitter quitter heavyweight fight where you're gonna see some. I don't know that I could say who's gonna win, but it'll probably be over in 2 minutes.
It's kind of odd with Butler being a former pro boxer in that he's gotten tagged a lot in his power. You think they're used to having those big pillows on their hands. You'd think he'd have the one hitter quitter, and it's understand. I think he's really taken all the differences of MMA into account, and I
Hmm.
hope not, but it might have actually kind of hindered his raw boxing power. Uh, anything else to say on that one?
No, not really. I mean, it's not a fight where it's like, oh, one of these guys is gonna be champ or fighting for the belt or something like that. But it's a fun heavyweight fight, and it should end quickly.
Actually, I was impressed with Butler because after he got taken down, he actually used grappling of all things to come back and win that fight. I don't remember who that was again. The other quick mentionable is Matt Bissett. I believe he was a semifinalist in the featherweight tournament a while back. pretty solid fighter, tough kid. He's fighting Josh LeBurge. But the one I think that jumps out to both of us right off the bat is Jason Butcher versus Tandon McCrory.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait for a chance to see the best guard in all of MMA again. That's really what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that didn't go over well. For those who don't know, Jason Butcher for a while was claiming to have the best guard in MMA. It was kind of on the heels of Aoki's exit. Not that that improved his case, but it made it a little more viable. Actually, he did all right with God, who was that? Giva or Jivas
Yeah,
Santana, the arm. The kid's good. There's no. I mean, I'll give him credit for that. He's talented on the ground, but he just didn't have the rest of enough handle on the rest of the MMA skill set to survive against some of the other guys. In Tandon McCrory, I think some people might be thinking he got the shaft. He just surprisingly knocked out Brennan Ward in brutal fashion. Although he is dropping down to welterweight, we believe for the first time Brennan Ward did get main card status here. But Tandon McCrory, I would throw him on the main card for sure. I think he's going to smoke Jason Butcher. Is that just me?
Yeah, no, probably. I mean, Butcher actually beat Jivan Santana standing up. Like that was how he won that fight. And it's not pretty stand up. It was just better than Santana's, who's really only a grappler. McCrory's boxing looked phenomenal against Brennan Ward, and he's in the past been every bit as capable a grappler as Butcher has ever shown to be. So unless Butcher's really somehow putting together some other ancillary skills, I don't see him beating McCrory here.
Yeah, I see him getting. He's been tough. Butcher's been tough, but
Yeah.
man, McCrory's a unique animal, and I agree. I mean, his boxing looked frighteningly phenomenal against Brennan Ward.
Hmm.
Actually, it's a real bummer. I suppose it's the whole British invasion theme that put him on the undercard here, but man, it sure seems like he'd be worthy of a main card slot, and some not only worthy, but someone they'd want to market.
Yeah, he does seem like somebody that, especially if he gets another big win here, that you'd have to imagine would start getting some main card time. But I think this is also like this is a big tentpole show, so they're kind of pushing some of their, they're putting more guys on the undercard that it for other cards would probably be main card. I mean, you look at their last main card, and you know, Chris Honeycutt, Julia Budd, those are the kind of spots that somebody like McCrory or Bissett would be occupying on a normal Bellator show.
Yeah, because as we've talked for a while, Bellator was doing really well with their undercard. I guess just the overall status of their undercards, and now for the last 3 or 4 fights, they've been really low. So
Hmm.
this one is excellent, but I kind of hate to see that come at the expense of Tandon McCrory. But let's move on to the main card here. This is one that I think, if I look at it from more of the casual view, I think it's pretty good. But from a hardcore view, I am actually really excited for this. There's a lot of matchups that to me are really intriguing. Your thoughts on the main card lineup?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it even from the casual view, like I don't think that any of these fights will go 3 rounds, and that's a nice promise for a main card. Is you have all action fights that should all be finished early and violently.
Not to put you on the spot, but what are the 2 fights, pick 2 on the main card you're looking forward to most? And really, it's just, there's one that I'm oddly really looking forward to.
Um, Honestly, I'm looking forward to the main and co-main event, Daley Santos, McGeary Newton. Those are the fights. Like Daley and McGeary are so violent that it's hard not to be really excited for those. But I don't know. Sokoju and Ward are both exciting guys too. So I'm not like unanticipatory about those two. It's just that Daley and McGeary are definitely more technically consistent with their exciting power.
So the fight I'm unusually anticipating is the only one you didn't mention. Does that mean you're not digging King Mo and Congo?
I'm looking forward to it in like a total freak fight sort of way, but it's not like it, I think of all of the fights on the main card. I don't know. Like that one is the one where I think it also has the most potential to be a grinding 3 round decision for some reason. Just
Yeah.
because Congo has a tendency towards that, and I don't know how much power Mo is going to have at uh, a heavyweight. So if Mo can't knock Congo out and Congo decides that he doesn't want to kickbox Mo, then we could be in for a really unexciting fight.
I'm hoping one or the other though. That
Yeah.
King Mo goes after him, but we'll get to that one. We're going to start off with Curtis Millander. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Versus Brennan Ward. I'm going to let you take this one. To preface this, I went to watch some fights on Curtis, and there was a lovely playlist by one Zane Simon. So my only thoughts are, I believe that Brennan Ward is dropping for the first time to welterweight for
Yeah.
this bout. I don't know why I love Brennan Ward. Good dude, crazy dude, but really talented guy who I think before was really getting by in his natural talent. Crushing loss had to be one of those big gut check right in front of his home crowd, and that was Tandon Mccrory. So I expect him to come back and look really good at 170. What do you know about old Curtis, the courteous one, right?
Yeah, Curtis Millander. He was a runner-up on our welterweight scouting report this last year for top prospects around the world. Didn't get into our top 10, but he was somebody that I thought would be fast tracking for a UFC slot just because he actually works at a UFC gym. Like that's his job is, he works at one of those UFC gyms around the country and that's where he trains too, is at like one of the UFC gyms. And so it was just like, how is he not going to get into the UFC? He works, it's such a weird disconnect then to see him in Bellator. That really kind of threw me, where it's just like, are you really not even scouting the guys that are coming out of your own gyms? Um, but he's a really good athlete, good technical kickboxer, has no secondary game whatsoever. So he kickboxes well. He's very athletic. Does not wrestle. Does not grapple. Kind of guy that he gets taken down and is just looking to scramble back to his feet as fast as possible. I thought he was going to be a really fun and potentially highly challenging opponent for Michael Page because Page has no takedown or ground game either. Uh, Brennan Ward, I think, has actually a much better chance to just beat him outright because I think Brennan Ward's a bit more well-rounded a wrestle boxer.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember what it was. It wasn't junior college. It was D2 or D3, and it was a school I hadn't heard of. It's something and something, like two names. But he was the number two runner-up, so he got all the way to the championships and lost. Really good, especially he's a really slow starter. In almost all of his Bellator fights when he was coming up, he lost the first rounder, did not look good, and then just poured it on and came back afterwards. He's also a kid who his dad ran a boxing gym, so he just grew up always around the boxing environment. I think he also was a really almost maybe even a decorated judo competitor, but this is back when he was like 10, 11,
Mm.
12 years old. He's got all the tools to win this fight, except he does have like enough piss and vinegar in him that he will. There's a good chance he will just try to beat Millander on the feet. He could play right into his game. I think if he uses all his skills, he should get a win here. But are you going to take a pick for this one?
Oh, I'm picking Ward just because I think that even like Millander is very good and has some power and some skill, but I don't know that he's so good that he's just gonna knock Ward out and or dominate him. And if he doesn't, I think at some point Ward will probably get the idea of like, oh, I should take him down and work him over on the ground a little. And if he does that, then I think he'll win. So I have to pick that as more likely, even though I think if it were like a straight kickboxing match, I could see Millander winning that.
Yeah, that actually seems to be the impetus for a lot of Ward's takedowns. Like, oh yeah, I can dominate this cat on the ground. I hope Brennan's taking this dude serious because not only two losses, but where is this? Isn't this one in Connecticut too?
Um, yeah,
Yeah. So, geez, another one in front of his hometown, and I think he's got a lot of talent. So, all right. So we're both taking Ward here. Oh, betting lines. I almost forgot. We have betting lines for this one. Brennan Ward is the favorite, but not by much. Minus 130 all the way across the board, plus 100 all the way across the board for Millander as the underdog.
part of that too is Millander is a Brandon Thatch-sized welterweight. He's 6'3", like serious athleticism and power, so or
Is
serious
he
size.
that big?
Yeah, so that is something that like there is some danger there.
Well, there is because Brennan's a great boxer. If you watch him, when
Hmm.
he fought Shlemenko, he really got to showcase some of that. But almost all of it's in the pocket. So I have no idea how he's going to do with a guy that is apparently going to be as gifted from range as him. So really looking forward to that one. Moving on to this next one, I was mildly surprised at the betting lines here. This is Linton Vassell, fresh off an unsuccessful title shot against Emanuel Newton, but looked pretty damn good. I think a lot of people that kind of legitimized Vassell. Oddly enough, an English dude, and you can't really say that none of those guys can grapple or wrestle anymore because that's this guy's core competency. He's fighting Sokoju, and even though I'm a fan of Vassell, not to be anticlimactic, but he's heavily favored on the betting lines for this one. Agree, disagree for that.
I agree, and I think that really that's one of those things where like it's hard to, Sokochu is one of those fighters that I think is stuck in everybody's head as like, oh, there's so much potential there. And even now, watching him, like, it's so obvious what physical tools he has, but the application is so inconsistent. And Vassell, I got to check this again, but I believe he's never, or, yeah, he's very hard to finish. He's been TKO'd uh, twice early in his career, in late in the third round. So you're probably looking at like exhaustion in
And do you have
fights
his
like that.
stats up there? Isn't he huge for the like 6'4", 6'3",
He's
Vassell?
6'4" for light heavy, with 6'4" light heavyweight. Really big, really physically dominant, very good positionally on the ground. And I just don't see Sokoju being consistent enough to hurt Vassell and finish him, and I don't, and then keep him off of him. And at which point, I think Vassell's got the advantage there. I mean, Sokoju's just lost so many times. Every time he's taken a step up in competition past the like bottom of the regionals or like the really regional scrappy guys. He beat Jan Blachowicz via leg kicks once, which he certainly has the ability to do, but lost to him the second time, lost to Jimmo, lost to Irokin, lost to Houston Alexander and Shamil Abdurrahimov. You know, the only time the only like win of note he has since 2010 was a DQ win over Dave Herman, which
Oh, that was an awesome fight. I jiffed that up.
yeah,
That's when Herman fell on his ass going for a spinning kick. Literally, spinning kick missed, fell on his ass, and rolled right into a leg lock. But
yeah.
it's almost sad because Sokoju does have just ridiculous. I mean, so if you could take all that out of the equation and just give me like prime form Sokoju on the feet, I think he could sprawl and brawl his way to, I don't want to say an easy, but I would put him as the favorite in this one because I don't think Vassell's polished up his stand up quite enough. But everything else is polished up, his clinch, his grappling, his infighting. And that's the other thing. Sokoju, you'd think with his judo that would be he'd be able to keep Vassell, off him. But so it's crazy. But I mean I do agree I'm gonna take Vassell, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. He's favored minus 325 as at the highest, minus
I think if
300.
it were one of those things that maybe Sokoju was like 9-3 or 9-2, and we were talking like, oh, he slipped up once or twice, but he still he still really has it, then I could see that. But it's just been so many times against so many. Anybody who can take a shot and doesn't just wilt in front of him can take him, and Vassal's definitely that guy.
So it's like we would never even have heard of Sokoju, nor would he have ever risen up if you take away those two amazing knockouts in Pride, Arona and Little Nog. So he's definitely, and it's not like he's milked those because he still
No,
showed signs that hey, maybe he
I,
can get it clicking, but
physically and with like basic technique, Sokoju, you still watch him and it's just like, damn, there's so much there. Like there's every time I see him win, it's like, oh, that is like he dominates the regional level. Just absolutely dominates it. But then he gets that step up to the guy who's like just, coming up, going to be on bigger cards, or it goes up to a bigger card and just loses just as badly as he wins. So he's stuck in that weird, like, better than the regional guy, but worse than the A level guys.
yeah, that is odd. It's almost like he'll dominate any fighter up to a C plus fighter, but once you get into the B minuses, he starts to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe he'll surprise us and at least show some good shit here. All right, so here's the next one. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's like the old Pride fanboy in me, but I like with Bellator having a limited roster, not a ton of big names. For some reason, I like that they're thrown together, Congo and King Mo.
Yeah, it's a great fight. It's exactly the kind of fight I want to see them put together, just because it's the kind of fight that I think it's the kind of fight that the UFC in general would never make or does not make. We see. I mean, yeah, we saw Benson Henderson versus Brandon Thatch, and we'll see like occasional stuff like that where guys who are either looking to make long-term changes will go up, or really established championship level talent will make fights up and down or something like that. But I'd like to see more fluid weight change in Bellator, more of this just like where can we make the action fight with guys that we have, and this feels like that. This feels like we've got Czech Congo, we've got King Mo. I mean, Congo's not a huge heavyweight for as big as he looks. I think he usually like weighs in around 230, I want to say, at 235. And I'm sure that Mo probably weighs in around 225 when he doesn't cut before he cuts. So you're talking like really not a huge size difference, especially if you consider that Congo's probably never cutting weight. You
And
know?
Mo, of course, started off his career as a heavyweight for a
Yeah.
short spell. So, and on top of that, both of these guys, I think they have name recognition, but they're kind of, I don't want to say in limbo, but they're kind of at that point where, they can't pitch either of them as a huge threat to the title right at
Mhm.
this moment. So I like it. It's like a shits and giggles fight. It's just, and you're
Yeah.
right that the UFC, understandably so, considering their identity in the MMA market. But that's to me that's why I like that Bellator is doing this. I hope they do a little bit more.
It's sort of more back to like Franklin Wanderlei, like
Yeah,
that kind of matching, and I like that matching.
me too, for sure. Matchup wise, how are you seeing this one? And that's the
Ah,
other thing is I'm having a tough like I, I still am not quite sure. So of course I can see King Mo being. To me, this is all about King Mo's entries. And when he looks good, it's when he's light on his feet and he can explode after takedowns. When people, I was a little sensitive, I don't know why, but when people were really down, I think a little too hard on King Mo after coming back from that knee surgery, or what do you have, staph in his knee, or
yeah.
but it was like you could tell when he would change levels, it wasn't as fluid and explosive as usual. And to me, that should dictate this because if he doesn't have that, I can see Congo keeping him at range or using his clinch to keeping the fight upright.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that it's way easier for me to see how Congo wins than it is for me to see how Mo wins. In that, like, I think Congo could win if he can kind of just use his physical size to bully Mo and clinch with him and grind him and stay on Mo and make it kind of an ugly fight. And I could see Congo winning if he just has more power trading shot for shot with Mo. And so that leaves a lot more unknowns for me on the Mo side, where it's like, does he have the power to trade shot for shot with Congo? Can he out wrestle him? Can he take down somebody bigger than him who's been a pretty competent sprawl and brawl, or like, not even sprawl and brawl, but competent grinder and competent inside takedown defense kind of fighter? I don't know that I would. It's harder for me to bet on Lawal overcoming those unknowns than it is for me to bet on Congo picking up the kind of grinding decision wins that he's been known for. So I got to take Congo here, but it's definitely a very interesting fight.
I actually enjoyed and appreciated your train of thought there because I was also leaning Congo but wasn't sure why, and it's just there's more of a clear path to victory for him. I'm interested to see how King Mo's hand speed compares. I
Yeah.
think actually Congo is pretty quick with his hands, but maybe that there'll be that difference with Mo coming up. But really, so for me, if I'm Czech Congo, the one I'm always yelling at him every fight that he has. I think he has. Well, I was gonna say a really deadly one too, but a lot of times it's just a long right cross. When he's fighting a grappler and he lowers his stance and just keeps that straight right, it's like a telephone pole. I don't know why he doesn't either throw it more, or if I'm him, I'm centering all my combinations around that because he does a good job. I mean, it's sharp, it's accurate, and it's really hard to get in on his hips. But I think as long as he withstands the initial onslaught from King Mo. I think his knees in the clinch might be a factor. I think Mo's way better everywhere past the clinch towards the ground, but actually Congo's become a pretty slippery scrambler.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to go with Congo too, but I'm going to be excited to watch this. I actually like both guys. Don't want to see either lose, but that means I'll be kind of okay with whoever gets a win here. Now on to the co-main event.
What are the odds for the
I'm
King Mo?
My bad. Congo's favored minus 135 all the way across, and King Mo's at about plus 105. And I think those I'm actually ready. I'm cool with that. You?
Yeah, that seems right to me. Yeah, I could even see Congo being a little higher, but not way higher. It just really depends.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but I'm really interested to. I'm looking forward to that one for some reason. Up next, Semtex Paul Daley versus Andre Santos. Santos, one of the few members out of the Hano Vacao fight team, which is, I've actually written a couple of articles, but they're the Luta Livre purists.
Hmm.
Um, Raphael Silva, Morcega, who I think is a real underrated guy, gave Joe Warren a hell of a fight on short notice out of Bellator. Bellator's had a couple of those guys. Pretty tough matchup for him here, though. He's tough. He's a bruiser. He's a better grappler than Semtex, but I don't know if he can consistently get him down and do a lot with it. I think this is going to be exciting because he's the kind of dude, he's got technique on the feet, but he's just mean. He's pissed off. I mean, he's just going to throw almost in a brawling style. So, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think if Santos had a more technical wrestling game, I could see a real good chance that he could beat Daley. But watching some tape on him, I mean, he's very much the body glock and trip kind of drag you down takedown fighter, which as time has gone on, Daley's gotten better and better at kind of avoiding those kinds of fighters and becoming a more skilled sprawl and brawler. Even he lost to Yakovlev back in 2013, but Yakovlev's actually a pretty technical wrestler. He's not a real powerful fighter, but he's a very technical inside wrestler. And there's a chance that Santos could just be the younger, sort of younger in wear fighter, and Daley could be maybe losing a step, but they're both pretty solid long-time vets, and Daley's generally been a much more complete high-level competitor. So it's hard not to see Daley getting a knockout or kind of piecing up Santos on the feet.
When you said younger at first, you qualified it with, I don't remember how, like overall, but now I had to check. Yeah, Santos is 34. How old is Daley
He's
nowadays?
32, but
Okay.
Daley's been fighting for 3 or 4 more years. Is what I meant is that Santos is still kind of a fighter starting in 2006, kind of like back in he's still in the sort of like late prime of his career. And Daley's kind of one of those miracles where it's just like it's kind of remarkable that he's still being competitive at the level he is. And it's not an amazingly high level, but he's still winning consistently and being a pretty competent fighter, which after for a guy who's been around since 2003 is pretty remarkable.
And a weird thought came to mind. I mean, for all we know, Paul Daley could have improved, dramatically, since we've seen him at the top level. But either way, I think you really nailed it with the style of takedowns from Santos. I think it was the Teron Woodley fight, even against a super credentialed wrestler. Man, if he clinched up and went for trips or throws, Daley was money. I mean, his clinch,
Hmm.
if he's got an underhook in, he knows how to lower his base and use the fence now. Where he really got in trouble was that smooth, reactive
Hmm.
takedown or the duck under, or that smooth transition from standing in that level change. And I haven't seen Santos use that hardly at all, and I would hardly call it a proficiency. Um, if he does get it on the ground, he's a really crafty
Yeah.
uh, grappler, but I think he's going to have a lot of trouble. And maybe it'll turn out. I think it's going to be a big problem for him that he's a little wild and unkept in the stand-up department. But if you can, maybe stay in Daley's face and just get all over him, that's better than if you just stay at range like a sitting duck. But Daley, for a while, I would say he's got the best left hook in the game. Just he's not around as much, but still, that is a nasty left hook. I see him putting him out with that back off the back foot check hook, lights
I
out.
would say this is one of those fights where I wouldn't be incredibly shocked if Santos got one of those wins that makes you go like, "Whoa, what happened to Paul Daley?" Like, I could see that happening.
I could too, because he's tough as shit and he's
Yeah,
solid, like all the way
yeah,
across the board. Like, I don't know. It's hard to. I'd say B plus everywhere. Like striking, footwork. He's really tough and mean too. So it's kind of like every Paul Daley fight we talk about, though, right? I mean, uh,
yeah. Like it's definitely the kind of thing where especially it's just it's one of those hard things to quantify with fighters as they get older. Is that sometimes like I mean Daley has taken some serious steps down in competition with the guys he's beating. Rudy Bears, Patrick Valley, Rodrigo Ribeiro, Lucas Chelwicki, Romario Manuel da Silva. Like these guys are not like when he was beating even Fioravanti and Radaev and Shirai and Smith and those kinds of competitors, like he's just not beating the same level of competition. So a fight, he lost to the best fighter he's faced recently, which is Alexander Yakovlev. And so a fight suddenly up against Andre Santos, that could be once again like a just too big a step back up from the guys that he is beating.
and I think Daley's that kind of guy where he thrives in the spotlight. So hopefully this will get him back to where, because I can see him having a good, like not caring that much, after going from the UFC main card status to, really two levels down in competition and promotions maybe. So another one I'm looking forward to, though, and I would not be surprised if Santos is able to pull that out either. Now on to the main event. It's another one. Man, I'm really surprised. The champion, Emanuel Newton, a guy that I still think is kind of overlooked as far as the overall MMA world. He is the underdog to violent challenger, granted, Liam McGeary. I think we talked a little bit about this beforehand. I think
Yeah.
that's weird, a little
I
surprising. Understandable, but surprising. You?
Yeah, I mean the thing with Newton is, and I think there's a very good chance he beats Liam McGeary. I don't think that's like I wouldn't be shocked at all if he wins. But it's just like all of his fights are either really close decisions, where like Attila Vey or I mean his second one over Mo was I don't know, it wasn't like that close, but it wasn't like utter domination either, and Zayat's as well. Um, or he's kind of not doing that great, and then he pulls the win out of no, like a late win out of nowhere. And it's because he has this really consistent, unorthodox approach that he sticks with to a fault almost. So it's just like, early on you'll be like, oh, wait, I can, walk through his light punches, avoid his spinning back fists, and piece him up on the inside or pot shot him from range, and I'm doing really well. And then he's tough as hell and almost impossible to submit. And he keeps throwing that wild spinning stuff, and suddenly you're not watching for that spinning back fist out of nowhere, and it just knocks you cold. And that's certainly what we saw with Beltran fight, and with the Vassal fight. That was a war of attrition too. Like Vassal was doing really well early, winning the scrambles, getting the positions, but he couldn't submit Newton. And when he couldn't submit him, he eventually wore down, and Newton submitted him. So I think this is one of those fights where if McGeary can't knock Newton out early, and I'm not sure he can, I don't know that he wins this fight. And at that point, I think I'd pick Newton for the like second or third round KO here.
I'm First of all, I agree with everything you said. Emmanuel Newton's completely everything about him is awkward. His rhythm, his stance, his tempo. Like he's a very unusual fighter, and I kind of like that he's taken that and really like gone with it. Made it his thing. but I mostly agree with what you said. He sticks with it almost to a fault. There were times when I think he's more dynamic than he's actually shown. And this will be a perfect test. So if I'm Emmanuel Newton, I'm looking to take, not desperately, not panicking, but I'm looking to test Liam McGeary on the ground. At first, I thought he was a little suspect because he's been taken down before, and it's clever as hell. But he immediately throws on like a guillotine and then change it like a quick submission and immediately changes it to a sweep. He did it once with an arm bar and once with a guillotine. I thought it was lucky the first time, and then he did it again. I was like, all right, I mean, it's not traditional, but it's effective. But then when he pulled off, who was that? Kelly Annenson?
Anderson. Yeah.
That was a little shaky on Annenson's part because you had to see that
Yeah.
coming. But to me, that was like, all right, maybe he's not just getting lucky. I mean, the kid, and I believe he trained for a long time under Henzo in New York.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm blabbering, but my point is just to me that's a question mark, and that's an area that Emmanuel Newton's pretty good and hardly ever like maximizes his potential there. If he is willing to stand up and trade with McGeary, I mean, big cojones, but worst possible thing he could do. And I'd probably take McGeary there just because he's so fast and long and violent.
Well, I think the thing would be though is that does Emmanuel Newton get knocked out? Is not does he win the early exchanges, but he's never been knocked out. Except in the very first fight of his career, Brian Ebersol of all people KO'd him.
Yep, pretty
But
understandable.
otherwise he's never been knocked out. He hasn't been knocked out since 2003. And so if McGeary, as fast and dynamic and powerful as he is, can't hurt him badly enough early to knock him out and finish him, does he win the rest of the fight? Does he have enough in his tank to win over 5 rounds? And that's to me why I'm picking Newton because I think it'll either be KO in rounds 1 or 2 for McGeary, or it'll be a late TKO or submission for Newton just because he's so tough. And he's even like, McGeary's submission game is wicked and it's unexpected and it's powerful, but Newton is so tough to submit too. And so I don't know. I just don't see it.
Too many uncharted waters for McGeary. I mean, he's only been out of
Yeah.
the first round like what, once, twice, third round, one time.
Yeah. Not much. Let's see.
I think the Annenson fight was as far as he's gone.
He's been in the third round in his first pro bout, in the second round in his third pro bout. Anderson fight ended in 4.5 minutes.
Ah, okay. But Newton is like as durable as they come, crafty, and he's the kind of guy that will still be there in the game. Um, so I'm going to take Newton, kind of for all the reasons that you mentioned. He's just really proven. He's not. You never know what to expect from him on the offensive end, and he's had some head scratching choices, but he's proven. I mean, the dude's got a lot of fights. He's been fighting a lot of top guys. He's been put in a lot of tough positions. To me, McGeary can deserve a loss. I think actually a loss is going to be really good for him right now. So I'm going to go Newton, but I'm still expecting big things from McGeary in the future.
Yeah, and like this could end in the first round with like a flash KO from McGeary, and I would not bat an eye at that at all.
No, I mean that's become his calling card almost. So in retrospect, I have nothing to suggest as far as betting plays. You?
Not really. I'm trying to think back to what
Millander's plus 100 as the dog. Sokaju's plus 250.
not really any value there to me. Millander could win, but at plus 100, you're not getting a lot out of that. And so could you almost certainly see. I mean, maybe bet on Vassal as the favorite. Like that seems like pretty good odds on him, considering how likely it is that Sokoju does not win, taking a step up in competition.
The only one that we didn't discuss, Santos versus Daley, plus 336 at the highest.
For
Just throwing that
Santos,
out there. Yeah.
yeah, that could also be, and that would really depend on what version of Paul Daly shows up to me. So
I wouldn't bet on
that
any, but if I had to make a suggestion, it'd be that one, I think.
that might be worth something. Otherwise, you could bet on Vassal as the favorite and Santos as the underdog. Otherwise, a lot of this seems, um, and maybe Newton is the underdog, but a lot of these are really toss-up kind of fights where I don't have a clear line on who's going to win, and I don't know the odds are so long on any of them that they would then be like, oh well, that's
See, it's weird
really valuable.
because I never bet because I'm broke as shit.
Hmm.
But Newton has the underdog, so it's hard for me to say, to suggest to other people. I don't even know what it's like to have money anymore. But Newton has the underdog. I guess so. I look at it as the confidence in my pick. To me, I don't think he should be the underdog. So yeah,
Yeah, I think there's
that's
some
one to take
value
a look
with
at.
Newton. With Newton as the underdog, that actually seems like some value there because McGeary's really unproven against name fighters and in championship caliber fights.
Yeah, and I don't have his record in front of me, but if you look back at Newton's record, I mean, there's names you'll recognize on there, guys that either have been or eventually moved on to the UFC. So,
Yeah.
really, really legit fighter. He's actually as high as plus 171 in one. So, I would both he and Santos actually to me I'd be more confident in Newton at plus 71 because you don't have a lot to lose
Yeah,
there. So,
Newton's a lot. I think Newton's a much better pick than Santos. Santos, I wouldn't pick him as the favorite, but I think, there's like a chance he pulls off the upset depending on how Daley shows up. Newton, to me, seems like he's the guy who you can depend on to win a 5 round fight, and McGeary is not a guy you can depend to win a 5 round fight.
yeah, because he's never been in one before. And it
Yeah.
also depends on the way you like to bet. Like, I have never suggested betting on a negative number until one came up in the Vivisection. What was that?
Oh,
Wasn't
I
it
don't.
Derek Lewis in first,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
pro- that would be the first time I'd take that negative number. And I'm just that kind of guy. I would rather throw a little to gain a lot rather than, risk a lot, even if I'm real confident. So it's up to you, folks. Whatever flavor you
Yeah,
prefer.
take the advice of two people who don't gamble at all with a heavy dose of salt. Is essentially what we're
Yeah.
saying.
And have poor, less than lucrative careers, and one of which is broke as hell right now. The IRS is going to be knocking on my door. Final thoughts, closing comments, words of wisdom.
It's a fun card. It's a fun card, and it's a fun weekend of MMA. I mean, between this and Cyborg being back and the UFC event on Saturday, which at least has some fun fights on it, even if it's maybe not pay-per-view quality. There's a lot of fights to watch.
All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Remember to give us a like on YouTube. Zane, what does the button look like that they should
Looks like
choose?
that. It's down there on YouTube, down there, not on my screen. Not for me, but whatever.
Very fluid description. Thank you. He's at the Zane Simon on Twitter. I'm at Uncle Justice if you are so inclined. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.